Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers podcast. I'm Evan Ash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. Today on the show, we've got a little NFL. There's some really uninteresting playoff series that are happening and have ended in the NBA. But we're going to start in Major League Baseball, and Dem Oshon now 31-16 after finishing off a 3-game sweep north of the border against the Blue Jays. So this is way more than I could have expected out of this series for me. Like, I was honestly hoping for one game, and then the Orioles are on a 6-game road trip. Got after the 3 in Toronto, got 3 more starting tonight against the Yankees in New York. I was hoping the Orioles would win 3 out of the 6 games, and they've already done that in 3 games. So it's been tremendous. It's been contributions from everybody on the entire roster, right? The back of the bench guys, the people I complain don't get enough playing time, the regular starters, everybody has been contributing to this team's success. 31-16, 15 games over 500. Stunning. Even for me who, drinks way too much orange Kool-Aid in the summertime.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it while we were at King's Dominion, not watching the game on Saturday. And,
Yes.
That was we thought, or at least I thought, that might have been the win of the year, the game where the Orioles were down 5-2, and Ryan O'Hearn, of all people, hits a 3-run jack to tie it up in the 8th inning. He had 4 RBIs that day, and then the Orioles come out, and credit to Brandon Hyde, because Evan and I have criticized his moves before, as every manager gets criticized by crazy fans like us. It's the nature of the business, but he went out and did the thing he needed to do, which was he understood the situation. He understood that the win was there to be taken. With Felix Bautista on the mound, the Orioles took the lead with the automatic runner in the top of the 10th. It was 6-5, and Felix Bautista pitched the 9th inning already, and Hyde left him in knowing, okay, he'll be down tomorrow because he'd already pitched the day before, and now he's going to be tasked to pitch a 2nd inning. But the Orioles had the off day on Monday, so he'll have plenty of rest to be rejuvenated by the time the Orioles head to New York. And so we left him in there. Bautista struck the next 3 guys out, stranded the automatic runner for the Blue Jays. The Orioles win 6-5. And so then the next day, okay, bullpen's toast because Cano had pitched 2 days in a row. Bautista had just thrown 3 innings in 2 days. So those guys are going to be down. The Orioles have pretty much no chance to win if they end up in a close encounter where it becomes a battle of bullpens, right? Well, somehow Austin Voth actually shows up and pitches well, and the Orioles pull off an 8-3 extra innings win the next day, and maybe that's the win of the year. It's one thing after another with this team in a good way. And like you said, Evan, contributions from guys that we want to see more of, like Joey Ortiz with the double in the gap, helped turn several double plays that kept the Orioles from getting into major trouble, and guys that we have been critical of and wondered why you're here. Like Corey remembers me just asking Adam Frazier to justify his existence, not just his existence on the Orioles, but in general, and he's done so. Yeah, he's done so. He definitely did so in that series against Toronto. Ryan O'Hearn, as I mentioned before, some of the guys in the bullpen that we were like, oh, I don't know about that guy, like Brian Baker
McKenna
at times.
Contributed.
Yes, Ryan McKenna has been hitting the ball after he dropped the game in Boston, the 2nd game of the season. He's played pretty well in his opportunities when he's gotten in the game. So Like at this point, this is a no complaints podcast as far as I'm concerned with the Orioles. Like they've been fantastic, and it is just, I'm not gonna whine about them until they start losing, which might be tonight because they're playing Garrett Cole and the Yankees, and I'm pretty sure the Yankees have been playing better, although they've had a little bit of an easy stretch too, playing the Reds and the A's recently. But wins are wins.
Yeah, and the A's was now a couple of weeks ago. In fact, exactly 2 weeks ago. We've played the Rays since then, won 2 of 4. Played the Jays since then, won 3 of 4.
Shout out to beating up on the Blue Jays, huh?
And then we played the Reds, and we swept them.
You swept the Reds,
yeah. Which we needed to. We
Because
should
the
sweep
Reds,
the Reds because the Reds they're not good.
No.
But that did include what's his name, Hunter Green, who's a decent pitcher for them. But we took care of business on Sunday, despite the fact that for some reason we sat Aaron Judge the day before an off day for the team. Didn't make a lot of sense. While he's on a heater.
Yeah.
He had hit 7 home runs in 7 days, like earlier in the week, and he still hit a bunch of home runs. Like he hit 5 home runs in 6 games last week to win AL Player of the Week. Like the dude is crushing it right now, and we sat him. And then Aaron Boone got ejected in the first inning. Eric, did you ever find out why? Because I found out why.
I thought about it, but I got distracted.
I'll tell you why. And it's going to be even more stupid than you could possibly imagine.
Can't wait.
So, Luis Severino was making his season debut on Sunday for the Yankees. I believe he walked the first batter he faced, which was your utility player on your fantasy team, Jonathan India.
Jonathan India's good.
He's done quite well. 2 outs later, one of their players, I don't remember his name. He's not a particularly relevant player, certainly not for fantasy
There's
baseball.
not many on the Reds.
There aren't very many.
Jonathan India and Hunter Green. There you go. That's the list.
That's the list. He bloops one out along the foul line that hits off of a fielder's glove and bounces into foul territory, and the ref or the umpire initially called it a foul ball. The Reds challenged the call, and it was overturned. It hit off of his glove. The player was in fair territory, therefore the ball is fair.
Yeah.
Aaron Boone decided to argue a challenged call. In other words, a call that they reviewed, found definitive evidence to overturn. He decided to challenge it and got ejected.
Well, challenge. You decided to complain about it.
What are you doing, Aaron? What in the absolute... I can't even complete that sentence because it would not be appropriate for our podcast. We have agreed no hard cursing on this show.
Well, we've agreed to a lot of things like that, and it hasn't always stuck. There's always the bleep button.
There is always the bleep button.
But I mean, what I don't understand though. Again, I never understood arguing the outcome of a challenge when not only did they review it and you have to presume that they got the call right, especially in an overturn situation. The umpires on the field aren't the ones that make the call. It's the umps in New York that make that call. They took it out of the umps' hands on the field expressly so that they wouldn't feel, conflicted about overruling themselves and looking stupid.
So, yeah, I don't know what the hell Aaron Boone was doing there. But the Yankees wound up winning that game anyway.
Because it's the Reds.
Because it's the Reds. And because Luis
That was the one run they gave up that day.
Yep.
I think the batter in question was Spencer Steer. I pulled up the game summary.
Yes. Again, who
is that?
Yeah, never heard of him. I'm guessing that Boone was arguing. So the ball was ruled foul at the time, and Jonathan India was on first base. So then once they overturned the call on the field and called it a double, Jonathan India was allowed to score when usually if it's ruled a double, everybody just moves up 2 bases. So maybe that's what he was arguing.
I still feel like that's something that probably would have been determined by whoever was in New York ruling on that challenge. Like the only because why would he be allowed to score? If he was already past third base at some point during the play, I would imagine that would be the rationale for allowing him to score in that situation. But I still doubt that was the decision of the umpires on the field because the umpires on the field initially called it foul. So not only does the overturn to make the ball fair fall on the replay official in New York, I would imagine that any other outcome as a result of that change would also fall on the shoulders of whoever is making that decision in New York.
It is still surprising, though, that the
It's kind
run
of a
was
gray
allowed to
area.
score in that context. Because, I mean, I imagine the umpire called foul ball as soon as the play took care of itself, right? Like, so it wasn't like they let it run and India clearly scored and then they said, no, foul ball.
It was a pop-up, so I don't know exactly like how high it was and how far along the line it was. I didn't see the play.
Okay,
Question.
well,
Oh, I just saw it just now, and India wasn't. It was a 2-2 pitch, so India wasn't running on the pitch. I think the rule may have been misadjudicated, and India should have been assigned to third and not been allowed to score.
Well, I guess I don't know if the umpires saw where he was when the call was made, and if they determined that there's no way in hell he wasn't going to score. I don't know, but
He's a fast guy, so
yeah, I know. He's on my team.
I'm guessing it would have been handled like a ground rule double, where everybody just gets 2 bases.
Regardless, this does not feel like a situation where it warranted a tighten your crap up.
It also feels like India probably would have scored had they gotten the call right in the first place. So Boone is kind of arguing for an unjust benefit based off of strict adherence to rules, instead of actually saying, okay, we accept it because they messed it up and that would have been the situation anyway. But of course, that's not what Aaron Boone does. He's going to whine until he gets his way, and if he thinks he's got a case, he's got a case. So that's just what he does.
As I've said before on the show, he needs to go. Cashman needs to go. Sick of both of them. But the Yankees are on a heater. Eric, you mentioned that you thought the Yankees might be doing a little bit better than the Orioles of late, and technically, yeah, they are. They're 8-2 over the last 10 compared to the Orioles' putrid 7-3. They're both better than the Rays in that stretch. They're 5-5.
Well,
so making up
it
ground.
helps that. I don't remember how long ago the Rays series was. It was probably two weeks ago at this point, where the Orioles hosted the Rays.
Yeah, because I think you
May
guys
8th
hosted them
to 10th.
just before we played them.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the Rays are losing a little steam.
They are.
Yeah, right.
They're still 21 games
they're-
above
they're-
500.
They're still really good. Yeah.
But they're only 3 games ahead of the Orioles right now.
There you go.
They're 9.5 games ahead of the Jays, who are 2 games above 500.
And who are currently in last place.
They lost 5 games in a row.
Sucks for
Toronto
them.
would still be tied for first in the AL Central.
Yes,
That's
they would.
facts. Yeah.
And they'd also be, I think they'd only be half a game back in the NL Central.
That is also true.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be just a half game behind the Brewers and the Pirates, who are 25 and 22 apiece.
Yeah. Yeah. Not AL East, but AL Beast. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Mediocre clubs need not apply. So I mean, is that all you got on the Yankees, Corey?
Yeah, pretty much. Eric already mentioned Garrett Cole's on the mound tonight. That Yankees-Orioles game just got underway. I think Cole has set down the first 2 batters. Actually, no, they have a runner on first. The Orioles do with 2 outs right now.
Anthony Santander walked
Okay.
on 7 pitches. Santander's been seeing some pitches.
He's been working some really nice at bats.
Yeah.
Nice. Yep. So after this series, the Yankees will play San Diego over the weekend. Another home series for the Yankees before they hit the road to play Eric's Mariners
My Mariners.
and then the Dodgers. So some tough series coming up.
Oh, not with the way the Padres have been playing lately.
Well,
They've been
yeah.
terrible. Yikes.
Not the Padres, but the Mariners are still. I mean, the Mariners are scrappy. They're not playing maybe quite as well as I expected them to coming into the season, but they're only a game under 500. And then the Dodgers are,
The Dodgers are the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah. So we love baseball on this show. We're excited. We watch every night for the most part, unless we're at an amusement park.
Or we're doing this.
Which is also every night for the most part.
Houston, by the way, has the best record over the past 10 games, 9-1. They're still a game behind the Rangers.
The Rangers have been cooking.
Yeah, the Rangers have been.
Adolis Garcia has been insane this year. Like he'll have plenty of like just regular nights where he doesn't really do a whole lot, but then he'll come out with 3 hits and it'll be like a double, a triple, and a home run, or a single, a double, and a home run, or 2 home runs and a double, or something like that. Like, he has probably 5 or 6 3-hit games this season. It's absolutely ridiculous.
All right, before we move on to, I guess, football, the Oakland A's fired their broadcaster Glenn Kuiper
Yes, they did.
last week for saying the N-word live on television.
I think the official decision came down yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the news.
He had been suspended, but he was fired yesterday.
He's like suspended indefinitely. And then fired for real yesterday. So he was describing the Negro League Museum, and said
it did
the
not
wrong
come
word.
out that way.
Yeah. Whoops. So, bye, I guess. And then, Bob Huggins, the head men's basketball coach at West Virginia, still has a job for some reason after saying a homophobic slur on live radio multiple times. This was a couple weeks ago, but we hadn't. We failed to mention that in our previous podcast, and then we were off last week. So, a lot of people saying stuff they really, really, really shouldn't be saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. I don't have any insight into what Glenn Kuiper is like. I think that if this was somehow an honest mistake on his part, then this is an unfortunate outcome for him. But I don't see how you make that error when your literal job is to speak on the radio. Like,
I think it was on TV.
Or on TV, regardless. Like, your job is to speak. You're paid to do this. You've been deemed very good at this, very good at saying exactly what you intend to say. You can't continue after that.
No.
I don't see how you can continue after that. Not within the same organization, and maybe not within the same sport or within the same profession at all. I'll leave that to people who actually know him as a person and can attest to what he's like. But if nothing else, optically, it would not look good for the A's to retain him as their broadcaster.
Well, I think it's important to note that this isn't the first time this has happened. This happened
For him?
For him, yes. In 2020, during the cardboard cutout season with the fake fans in the audience, I don't remember where they might have been playing in Kansas City, but they were playing against a team, or maybe it was them, that had put up cardboard cutouts of former Negro League players as the fake fans, right? Like, you can submit yourself as a cardboard cutout. I think Sean did that.
Yeah,
I did.
I'm sure
And
Sean did.
on the broadcast, he used the same slur in the same nature, referring to the Negro Leagues as, that other thing. So this is bite number 2 at that apple.
Yeah, okay.
Like, at that point, it's like, okay, if it was some weird slip of the tongue or awkward Midwestern accent thing or some other nonsense that people like to use, you said it once.
Yeah, it sounds like they gave
How
him
do
the
you
benefit
make
of the
that
doubt the
mistake
first
twice?
time and said maybe it was that. But at that
Yeah.
point, you got to learn from it.
You've got
do
to
it
course
again.
correct, dude. Like, you can't
If
just say, forget it.
And if it literally is something where like you can't help it but have it come out that way because of your accent or some weird thing like that,
You're gonna
maybe
have
just
to
don't
help
talk
it.
about the Negro Leagues.
Yeah, maybe avoid that, or have the other guys say it, or or make up some weird name. Well, of course, if you say the Blacks Only League, that could come across as racist in its own
that
right.
probably
But
would be
you
problematic as
figure
well.
out a way as a professional talker on TV to navigate this without having this happen a second time.
How has it happened more than once? I mean, the first time
happening once is already kind of pushing.
I was not aware of that context.
Yeah.
That definitely.
That
tears it.
Yeah, that's it.
That makes it an easy.
There's no more
decision.
conversation. At that
No.
point.
Okay.
Oh, Adam Frazier 2-run double off of Cole.
Orioles lead.
Boo.
Yeah. Cole got the first 2 outs and then walked the next 2 guys and then gave up a double.
Oof.
So,
That's okay. Kyle Bradish is on the mound. Yankees will win this.
I mean, that's very possible because Kyle Bradish is up and down, but he's been pretty good lately.
He sucks.
Sounds like Garrett Cole sucks. He's giving up all these runs.
I think Garrett Cole sucks.
For
but
Pete's
Kyle's
sake.
Bradish.
Yeah, for Pete's sake, indeed.
All right, moving on to football.
We have football to talk about. I guess there is the rule change that came out today.
We also have a
Unfortunately, we
particularly
have football to talk about.
significant figure that passed away this week.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we'll talk
So
about
Jim
that.
Brown passed away
Yes.
this past week. I think was that Sunday or Saturday?
I
Maybe
think
Friday.
it was Saturday, but I was sick this weekend, so the days kind of blur together.
was over the
Regardless,
okay.
it was over the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Brown is a titan of the sport, certainly. My sister and I drove by his statue up in Cleveland almost exactly a year ago now, and the impact that he had on the game of football and the earth cannot be forgotten or understated. Mike Wilbon this week told a story on the Tony Kornheiser podcast about how when Jim Brown was living in Los Angeles, he had leaders of the Bloods and the Crips over to his house to negotiate some sort of, ceasefire or peace or something between them, which is incredible. Like, just wow. I believe he was the all-time leading rusher in NFL for a while. I can't remember who broke his record first. But yeah, this is a big loss in the football community, and it I guess can't go unmentioned.
Yeah, Jim Brown has a legacy that is frankly a little complicated. If we're being honest about things, I can't let it go unmentioned about his long, and I cannot emphasize this enough, long track record of domestic violence. And I think that is something that needs to be mentioned alongside all the good that he did on the field and off the field. And it's something that was unbelievably disappointing. Obviously, the acts are atrocious, and in the context of today's society, look far worse than they did back then, and they should never have looked passable even back then. But the fact that he also never seems to own up to it, right? Like, he never seems to take any responsibility for it. It was so unfitting of the character that he showed otherwise, where he was always upfront and honest and accepting of everything that he was, except on that issue. And that's a pretty big issue to try to skate on. And I think that it's worth talking about in general because it has to do with a lot more than just, the acts themselves. It has to do with how men handle themselves when they make mistakes, and how sometimes people feel like they can't accept shame for prior errors, for transgressions that were beyond the pale, and they feel like they just can't own them, so they run from them. And I think that, again, that's something that didn't fit Jim Brown's profile otherwise, because he was clearly a courageous man, except when it came to himself. He was perfectly happy to fight others that were wronging him and his community, but he couldn't look within himself at times to see that he had his own demons to fight.
I didn't even know that happened.
It's something that doesn't really pop up in a lot of biographies that you might read about him. Generally speaking, when you hear about Jim Brown, he was a terrific football player, one of the best running backs that the game has ever seen.
Probably the best if we're being real.
Probably. I mean, people talk about how short Barry Sanders' career was. Jim Brown also did not play that long of a career in the NFL. He was 30 when he retired, and he held all these records at the time. You know, his rushing yards per season and per game records are still very much near the top of the leaderboards in those metrics. Look at his highlight reels, and they're some of the best that you'll find. He was an icon in Hollywood as an actor. Some of the most iconic moments on screen. He had one of the first, I think he had like one of the first interracial love scenes in a film. Granted, I think that even that scene, there was a little bit of something that may have reflected some of the less becoming moments of his life that Eric just brought up. You know about him as a civil rights activist, and he's portrayed in, among other films, One Night in Miami, being in that hotel room with Muhammad Ali and Sammy Davis Jr. and it was Malcolm X, right?
It was Malcolm X, yeah.
Having that discussion about how they, as cultural icons, were going to fit into this larger movement. But you can't ignore some of those other off-the-field issues that unfortunately do sometimes get ignored for him, largely because of the time that he was living in, when things did not get into the media as readily as they do now, when you have situations like what we saw just a couple years ago with Deshaun Watson. There was not the same avenue for women to step forward and make their voices heard over issues like that there is now. And so it was a lot easier for him to sidestep. It was a lot easier for him not to have to come face to face, even sometimes with questions about domestic violence. So definitely a complicated legacy. I don't think that it would be right to take away all of the good that he did off the field, but you do have to acknowledge the bad.
Yeah, I feel like that's the case with everybody. I mean, you can't paint a picture without the whole picture, right? Like, you got to have the entire thing, warts and all, needs to be told. Because, again, even from people who do good things but have demons like that, there are learning opportunities from everything you do, whether it's good or bad. So it's important to tell that part of the story, because it's not... It also avoids the issue of just pure hero worship, right? Like, a lot of times people think that great men do great things, and nobody who is imperfect can do these things, so they kind of look at themselves and say, I'm just some random guy, I can't do this. No, you can overcome your own shortcomings and be better in certain ways. But you also have to acknowledge that you have your own failings and need to work on them. Like, you can't just pretend they don't exist.
Yep, but obviously one of the more visible, players from that era, just because, like, if you watch the NFL honors every year before the Super Bowl, like I do, he was always there in the audience every single year. So definitely somebody who's going to be missed in the NFL community.
Yep, icon of the sport.
Absolutely. And I guess, going to transition as best we can, unless I'm missing something, to the NBA. The Denver Nuggets are going to their first NBA Finals ever, and they've been in the league for 47 years?
56 years.
46 years?
56.
56. Oh,
yes,
okay.
5-6.
Okay. Well, congratulations to them. Nikola Jokic was named Western Conference Finals MVP. And the Lakers kind of unceremoniously bounced from the playoffs, and that leads to questions about what's going to happen.
The Lakers stink. Somebody's got to say it.
Oh, they stunk the joint out for the little bit of time that I watched. Orioles intermission right quick. So Orioles were up 2-0 entering the bottom of the first. Then Kyle Bradish, of course, walks the first two guys, and then gets Rizzo strikeout looking, and then DJ LeMahieu grounds into a double play. So Yankees don't score, and
like DJ LeMahieu.
Top two.
Jeez, Corey's
Did
on
you
one
say
today.
DJ
He's feeling it.
LeMahieu?
That's what he said. He's hunting for that title. He really is. He's fishing for it.
I don't think that would make a good one. How would you even write that?
I don't know. You can figure out. Anyway, so Evan, do you want me to talk about the basketball because I watched like all of it?
Yeah. Talk about the basketball.
Okay, well, I guess we'll talk losers first. Lakers swept. It was a pretty. I can't believe I'm using the phrase, but it was a pretty close sweep, if you will. The Lakers kept the game very competitive. In fact, they stormed out to like a 15-point lead at one point in yesterday's game, and the Nuggets just kind of chipped away and got their offense going in the third quarter. And soon, by the time you look up after a few minutes, it's tied again. But normally, I expected the Lakers to fold as soon as the Nuggets went on that run to tie the game, but they didn't. They stayed in it. LeBron was playing his ass off as best as he could as a 38-year-old geezer with a bad foot. But he had 30 points in the first half. He wasn't willing to go down, without a fight, which, something that certain teams have not necessarily shown the ability to do. We'll talk about them in a second. But, it was interesting because the Lakers really didn't have a reason to come out and try to extend the series other than pure pride because they were toast. There's no chance they were going to win this series. Even if they won Game 4 at home, they'd have to jump on a plane to Denver, probably catch an ass whooping in Game 5, and get packed up in a gentleman's sweep. But, they didn't want to have that sweep be on this team's record, especially because I do believe that this team, despite falling short and the inevitability of falling short being clear after they lost Game 3, they believe they can come back next year and contend. And maybe they can. So they wanted to show something. They didn't want to go out like suckers, and they didn't. I give them that credit. Despite getting swept, that they didn't look like suckers out there. But this team's got a lot of work to do when it comes to managing the players they acquired in their trades, when they traded Russell Westbrook away, when they acquired Rui Hachimura. A lot of those guys are free agents, and there's talk about them tapping other players on the shoulder and saying, hey, you want to come sign with the Lakers, and that gets complicated if you're trying to also retain Rui and also trying to retain Austin Reeves, who are both free agents. And there's been rumblings about a reunion of LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, and it is exhausting.
Ugh.
It is more exhausting than the Lakers were during the playoffs with how much people ran their mouths about, Lakers. And now Kyrie Irving is thrown into the mix. I looked up the numbers. I know a little something about how the NBA salary cap works, and there's no way in hell this team can sign Kyrie Irving to anything resembling a max contract while also retaining Rui Hachimura. It's just not going to happen. So they'd have to give up a young player who proved himself to be a valuable role player in their system, certainly was better than anybody that ever watched him play for the Wizards would think, but that's also because the Wizards are the Wizards. It's not a surprise to anybody that somebody would leave Washington and go somewhere else where there's good players and seemingly a decent coach and, a culture that actually cares about winning and thrives. And Rui seemed to thrive in his role with the Lakers, so it makes sense that they would want to keep him around. But
they should get rid of him and bring in Kyrie.
Yeah, let's bring in Kyrie Irving, who's now 31, I believe, who has a history of injuries. And, by the way, he's Kyrie Irving. All he does is ruin the place that he left before. That's his entire bag. And, of course, the guys on TV love to say, well, the only place Kyrie Irving ever worked was with LeBron James. And I feel compelled to always point it out. Kyrie Irving's rampage across the NBA destroying franchises started with the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James. Mm-hmm. It's not like he left LeBron under some unfortunate circumstance where, for whatever reason, they couldn't retain him, and then he went to Boston and ruined them, and then he went to Brooklyn and ruined them.
Out of here.
No, he torched the Cavs himself, demanding a trade after they had won a championship and then went back to the finals. He said, I want out of here. He threatened to have unnecessary knee surgery if the Cavs didn't get rid of him so that he wouldn't be able to play.
What?
Like, this was straight up psychotic behavior to get out of Cleveland. And you think that LeBron wants to run it back with that guy? Or if LeBron does, I'm looking at LeBron saying, what the hell are you thinking, dude? You really want to go back with him?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't add up. I obviously, I don't particularly care what the Lakers do if they decide to torch what little bit of credibility they have as a contender heading into the 2024 season. Go right ahead. But not what I would recommend. I would recommend they try to build out their roster a little bit more, get some better role players, some better shooters around them, keep Rui around, keep Austin Reeves around, hope that Anthony Davis can stay healthy like he somehow did throughout the last stretch of this season. And LeBron's probably going to have foot surgery. Who knows how good he's going to be next year. And we'll talk about the other talks about next year in a second. But this team could potentially be better than the version that existed in this playoffs, especially considering that D'Angelo Russell's going to be gone and he was a non-factor against the Nuggets. They can improve this team and make it really interesting if they do the right things. But we've also seen the Lakers be very impatient when they don't win. We saw it in 2022 when they decided to say, hey, we lost to the Suns in the first round despite the fact that LeBron and Davis were both injured. Let's go get Russell Westbrook. And it threw the next year and a half for them into complete upheaval. So I wouldn't count on them handling this intelligently, but there are ways to do it. And the way that is being pushed in the media is not the way to do it.
I'm looking up right now to see, did D'Angelo Russell score 11 points in any of those games against the Nuggets? And he did not. He scored 10 in Game 2, but he did not score 11. And if we remember back during the Golden State Warriors series, they were talking about how, the Lakers have not lost this playoffs when he scores 11 points.
Well, that remains true.
That remains true.
The problem is it never happened for an entire series.
Right.
So,
yeah, non-factor.
See ya.
How do you think this series would have been different if the Warriors had beaten the Lakers? Do you think this series would still be going on right now if the Warriors had beaten the Lakers?
I mean, it's hard to say because I don't think either the Lakers or the Warriors are capable of hanging with this Nuggets team. I mean, like the Nuggets have the depth that they didn't have last year. I think that Jokic has actually somehow improved his game, and his game was clearly very, very good the previous 2 years. And the reemergence of Jamal Murray, who I have been critical of on here and in life, really helps it seem like he doesn't have to be the guy that averages 32 a game like he was in this series. He just needs to be consistent as a good, solid second option for Nikola Jokic. And when we're talking about the Warriors, they were so dysfunctional. Clay was completely cooked in that Lakers series. He couldn't make anything, and yet he kept jacking up every shot he got. Jordan Poole is so far in his own head. It's a tragedy to watch him play basketball. Draymond might have actually bothered to show up against the Nuggets because he's not best buddies with LeBron and Clutch Sports, but who knows how well that would have actually played out for him. They might have stolen a game or two purely because Jokic would have had a hard time in pick and roll defending Steph Curry. But I don't see how the Warriors would have capably defended the Nuggets, especially when they had such a limited rotation. I mean, a 4-guard lineup against a team with Jokic on the court, a team with Aaron Gordon on the court, a team with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on the court, that's just not going to work. Yeah, that's just too much size to contend with to be sending 4 or 3 guys that are under 6'3" and the corpse of Klay Thompson out there. Like, it's not going to happen. So it's tough to say. Like, I feel like if you ran this series back, though, with the Lakers and they played the Nuggets 4 more times, obviously I think the Nuggets would win. They proved themselves to be the better team, but there's a pretty good chance the Lakers would pick one off. Like, the fact that they got swept doesn't mean that they would always get swept. It just means that it happened to be that these 4 games played out this way. So I don't necessarily know that the Warriors would have looked better. They still might have won a game.
That said, I think that I take your point that you can't say that any set of 4 games between these two teams would have resulted in a 4-0 sweep for the Nuggets. But when you have one of those games where the Lakers lead by 15 at halftime and are trailing by 5 after the third quarter,
Yikes.
Oh yeah, that was a collapse.
I feel like that team is just destined to be swept.
Well, it was pretty clear to me at that point that they were destined to be swept. But if that happened in Game 1, say where the Lakers just blew a lead in Denver, it's a different circumstance. I understand that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be saying they're destined to be swept. We were saying that they're destined to be swept because it happened in Game 4 when they were down 3-0.
I would have said the same thing if it had happened in Game 3 where it was on their home court.
Yeah.
Yes, it's different when it's in a road stadium, and a lot of things can go wrong in that situation. Maybe you get lucky, get off to a really hot start, but that home crowd can still get a team back into things. When you're playing on your home court,
Yeah, you got to close that.
you have every advantage. You have a lead, and you blow it like that. You get beat 36-16 in a quarter after you were winning by 15. That can't happen.
I'm honestly curious, though, because I've never attended a playoff game where my team was down 3-0. How much energy can you really have? And it kind of felt that way watching the game in the first half when the game was competitive. The Lakers were usually up by
But
a
they
few
were up by
points.
15 anyway.
Yeah, because they played better, but the crowd isn't necessarily going to boost you when everybody's kind of like, oh, it's nice, we might not lose.
But the crowd's also not boosting the road team.
Okay, so it plays like a neutral site game at times. So and again, the Nuggets
You
are
should
clearly
not
better.
be losing by 20 and a quarter in a neutral site game. Especially not when you are good enough to be in the Western Conference Finals.
Let's be real. The West was whack this year.
It was. There's a reason why coming into this playoffs, you were kind of agreeing with me that maybe the Warriors were the team to pick. Because how could you pick
There's
anybody?
nobody else, but the Nuggets have proven themselves.
Yes,
like
they have.
They
Yes.
proved themselves in round one. Even again, you would expect the 1 seed to beat the 8, but they didn't play around, right? Like they took care of that in 5 games.
took
They
care of business.
packed up the Timberwolves, who have plenty of talent. And I know they went 6 against the Suns, but that was a 6-game series where the Nuggets were clearly the better team. The Suns were holding on for dear life in their home games. Devin Booker was balling out, and they were still only winning by...
Booker was killing
Yeah,
it.
and they still only won those home games by like 3 or 5 points, and they got blown out every time in Denver.
Yeah, we pointed out that in the last game of that series, Booker was like minus 31 or something.
Yeah, they got
crazy
smoked.
stats.
Yeah, they got absolutely rolled
After
because
he had been excellent all series.
there was just no way that he was
yeah.
going to be able to sustain that.
They had no depth, so eventually
Yeah.
he was going to get tired.
Like he and Durant had played 40+ minutes in every single playoff game, including their series against the Clippers, where Kawhi Leonard wasn't even playing. Like they were at home for games where it's like Kawhi's not out there, Paul George is not out there. The other team's best players are Russell Westbrook and Norman Powell.
And they still needed them to
Who
play
was
40
Norman
plus
Powell?
Exactly.
That's a good question.
Might as well be Norman Bates.
Yeah,
Like,
that
what?
could be a problem in other ways, but I think that the Nuggets have asserted themselves as the favorite going into the finals against the Heat. Let's say what it is. It's going to be the Heat. But I also know that the Lakers were not that good. Like they had a lot of flaws and they got exposed. I mean, they thought that they had. And the funny thing is, after Game 1, where the Nuggets had a big lead, and then they put Rui Hachimura on Jokic for a handful of possessions down the stretch, and the Nuggets' offense stalled out, and everybody was like, "Oh, they've solved the Nuggets," and I'm like, "No, what they needed to do was win that game because they've already had their trick, right? Like that was their, we caught you off guard, slap you in the face type of thing." And it didn't work. They still didn't win. And the Nuggets adjusted. They got – and the thing is, everybody acts like, oh, my God, how are they going to figure that out? Like teams during the regular season never threw that at Jokic where they put a roamer out there instead of having their best big defend him one-on-one. People did that all the time. They looked at the tape. They said, okay, this will be straightforward. Just do something to pull Davis out of the paint. And that's what they did, and they throttled the Lakers. So, this idea that the Lakers had somehow solved the Nuggets in a loss, yeah, right. Like, get serious. But that was the whole conversation because it felt like everybody wanted to see the Lakers win, but they didn't because they played a much better team. And that's how it goes when you play the better team, when the team has the best player in the world at this point. I'm willing to say Nikola Jokic is that because he's earned that. And Anthony Davis, as good as he has been throughout this playoff run, especially defensively, he had no answers for him. And that says a lot about how well Jokic was playing.
Yeah.
I had never really watched Jokic play before, and I saw a bit of one of the games of the series, and he was incredible passing the ball. Like he was he's so big. So like he would stand at the top of the key, I guess, and like, he would get the ball passed to him, and then he'd like pivot around and stuff, and he'd be looking at the other 9 guys moving around, and then he'd find some, little crack of space and just dish the ball to a teammate perfectly for like a layup or something.
There's a reason why he
incredible.
gets mad triple doubles. There's a reason why yesterday, before we even got to the NBA Finals, he broke Wilt Chamberlain's all-time record for triple doubles in a single playoffs.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's
you
phenomenal.
break a Wilt Chamberlain record. That is saying something.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Evan, I understand why you haven't seen a lot of them because you don't really watch professional basketball very much.
Denver's kind of NBA Siberia.
Yeah, but this is what bothers me a little bit about the way that Jokic was covered, where you had a bunch of people in the NBA media acting like, oh, wow, I can't believe he's this good. I'm like, he won back-to-back MVPs, and the Nuggets have been a pretty good team for a while now. They made the Western Conference Finals in the bubble. They've been on TV plenty. They've played on Christmas. Y'all have cable television, right? Like, y'all watch...
Y'all are covering the sport. Yeah. You watch it, right?
Like what you're saying is that you deliberately don't watch Nuggets games. It's not because you don't have access to them. It's because you just don't want to watch them. No, just call it what it is. You see this big white guy who looks like he's got a cold running around out there, and you think, there's no way that guy's actually that good. And so you don't actually appreciate how good he is because you just assume that guy can't actually play. He's somehow just gaming the math of the NBA to somehow put up these insane levels of advanced metrics. No, watch him play basketball, and he is an impossible cover. There's nothing you can do out of him. You put him one-on-one, he's going to destroy you. He's going to bully ball your center. He bully balled Ayton. He bully balled Anthony Davis. He's probably going to do pretty well against Bam Adebayo, although I think that's an interesting matchup in the finals. He got the better of Draymond Green in a lot of games last year when he had zero help. And if you double off of him, he's the best passer in the NBA. Not the best passing big. He's the best passer in the NBA. That is an unreal combination. Corey's looking at me funny.
There's not a single point guard in the NBA that you would take over Jokic as a passer.
No. Not a single one.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. He's that good. I mean, show me a better passer. I haven't seen it. Yeah. So anyway, the Nuggets go to the finals. Again, I think they'll probably win, although I would love to see that matchup. I'm really excited. I'm excited for Heat Nuggets. That is pure basketball. There's not a bunch of crap about, LeBron James chasing Michael Jordan or the Boston Celtics or all this nonsense. It's just, hey, two guys, Jokic and Jimmy Butler, who have spent the majority of their careers being underappreciated, leading their team to the finals, and potentially squaring off for a legacy-defining championship run.
So let me ask you this, because something just came in on YouTube in the chat, and
oh wow!
And I'll get to what exactly Alex Mayo has said, but you say that you think that Jokic is the best passer in the NBA. What do you think of his dribbling?
Well, he's not the best dribbler in the NBA.
So Alex says he saw a tweet comparing Jokic's dribbling to a panicking walrus in sand.
Yeah, I saw that tweet too, and it was hilarious. But like that was more referring to like end of shot clock on those heaves that he hit all series, where he's just dribbling around.
I saw that too.
And just chucking up this insane three, and he hits it. And like again, this kind of shows the disrespect towards Nikola Jokic. The fact that shot that he hit was like number 7 on SportsCenter's top 10.
How? That was ridiculous.
That was the most insane shot of the playoffs.
That was like some of the worst form that I've seen on a shot.
But that's how he shoots, and he hits them. It's great.
And to be fair, he had to shoot it with that form because he had a hand in his face.
That's how he shoots.
But still, how did he make that? And like he did.
The thing is, and I'm gonna say this: if Steph hit a shot like that, it would be number 1. Like point blank.
Even though we see it all the time.
Even though Steph hits shots like that regularly, if he hit a shot like that in a playoff game with the shot clock winding down, in a closeout opportunity to go to the finals, if Steph hit a shot like that
against the Lakers,
yes, in Anthony Davis's face, it would have been number 1 on SportsCenter. But it's Jokic, so people kind of sleep on him, and it's crazy to me because how do you sleep on a guy this good? And if you like basketball, how do you not like watching him play? I don't get it.
I hope the other 6 plays were good. They better have been.
They weren't that good. Ugh. Like one of them was LeBron accidentally throwing the ball into the basket on a failed pass attempt, which was hilarious. But it
not
wasn't
a top play.
Like, Jokic actually meant to do what he did.
That's like honorable mention of not top plays status.
But it still counted as 3 points for the Lakers. So.
Well, it did. That's why it wouldn't actually be on the list for not top plays.
My dad sent me a text saying that Jaylen Brown is a better passer than Nikola Jokic. Pure sarcasm, I'm sure, because Jaylen Brown is a garbage passer.
What teams is he on? The Celtics?
Yeah, he's with the Celtics.
And the thing is,
speaking of the Celtics, though, I know that he's not active right now, but who would you take between Jokic and Rondo?
Oh, Nikola Jokic is a better passer than Rajon Rondo.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
I often think of Rondo as one of the best point guard passers of the past 10 years or so.
He was a great passer, but things that people don't always appreciate about passing is size matters there too. Like being able to see over everybody matters a lot. Rondo's a 6'1" point guard. If he gets caught in the trees, sometimes he would have some really ugly turnovers because he couldn't find people.
Does Jokic not have any turnovers when he passes the ball?
Of course he does, because he's trying to fit him in quarterback-sized windows. You know, like it's insane. But Rondo turned the ball over a lot more. And Jokic averaged similar numbers of assists while also being a scoring beast. So I'm giving Jokic the nod there.
Fair enough.
Although Rondo was great. Like, no doubt, Rondo, that was the only thing he could do well other than play defense and be really annoying was he could pass.
He could shoot okay, but he was very streaky in that regard.
He couldn't make free throws to save
No,
his
he
team.
couldn't.
Yeah, but I will say that a scared walrus in sand is still a better dribbler than Jaylen Brown. Pure facts.
Jaylen Brown can't dribble.
He can't dribble at all.
I like Jaylen Brown.
Can't dribble.
He can't dribble.
Can't dribble, can't pass. He's just awful.
So he's can he shoot? Because
Yeah,
it seems like you add him with Ben Simmons and they make a good basketball player.
Well, he can shoot
Apparently
and
Simmons
he can play
is a
pretty
great
good defense.
passer and dribbler, but can't shoot the ball.
Also, Cedric Mullins
Can
again.
Simmons pass, though?
Cedric Mullins. Can't escape him. Home run.
Great.
Home run. Yeah.
Fantastic. Also, speaking of the Celtics, we're talking about the Heat in the finals, but but it's technically not happening just yet. Game 4 of the Heat-Celtics series is tonight.
Not gonna watch.
For all intents and purposes, the series is over. The Heat are going to win. There's no way in hell the Celtics win 4 in a row at this point. It's not happening. No. But I have a question for you before we kind of talk about that series as a whole and then start really talking about the matchup between the Heat and the Nuggets that we're going to see starting in early June when the NBA Finals commences. Because for some reason, even if this series ends tonight, they won't start until June. Whatever.
Really?
Yeah, June 1st is the first game of the NBA Finals. They could have 9 days off with no men's basketball on TV.
But let me ask you this before we get to that discussion. Let's say the Celtics win tonight, right? Extend this series. They play again on Thursday. How big of a difference does this make for the Heat and for the Nuggets when they eventually meet? And what if the Heat have to play 2 more games?
So you're asking
after tonight?
You're asking if that
extra rest that the Nuggets are going to get. Right now, that extra rest, it's a day. It's negligible. It doesn't matter. But when you extend that 2 more days or potentially 4 more days, how much of a benefit could that be for the Nuggets? How much of a detriment could that be for the Heat? Or might it be vice versa?
I would say that no matter what, unless the Celtics push this to 7, there's only it's diminishing returns for each extra day of rest. If you get 1 day, obviously that's not enough. If you get 2 days, that's not great. But once you get past 4 days, you're pretty much going to be fully rested and ready to go as professional athletes, right? So if the Heat get 7 days, get a full week off versus the Nuggets getting 10 days off, I don't think it makes a lick of difference. The difference could be the fact that they have to play more minutes, which means potentially injuries, but hopefully that does not happen. The bigger concern to me would be the longer the series goes, obviously the better chance the Celtics have to pull this off. But they have no shot to pull this off, so let's call it what it is. The series is over. I do think that there is a possibility of a rest versus rust thing. Like you kind of alluded to that a little bit, suggesting that the Nuggets having so much time off could actually work against them because they're flowing right now. Jamal Murray's on fire. He's playing really well. Jokic got into a rhythm pretty well. KCP and Aaron Gordon just hit a bunch of threes, and he'd been struggling for most of the playoffs with that. Do they potentially cool off with that time off? Maybe, but that's all kind of just up in the air. Like that's kind of randomness. Depends on what happens with them when in practice. Depends on how seriously they invest in rest versus not getting rusty. It's a complete unknown to me. And so I don't really have much of an opinion on it beyond what I just said.
Okay. Who's the Nuggets coach?
Mike Malone.
Yeah, Mike Malone.
Mike Malone.
Yes.
Okay, never heard of him. I think it's worth pointing out how decisively, the American people and the whole world were spared from yet another Lakers-Celtics finals.
Well, you know
thank
that,
y'all so much.
You know that the NBA was praying for those Nielsen ratings for that potential finals, Lakers-Celtics, especially with LeBron James featured. That was something they were begging for, but
please no,
not gonna happen. So
yeah,
I've been. I hate the Celtics, or I don't hate them, but I strongly dislike the Celtics. I'll say that. So it does break my heart to see them getting packed up, but if I didn't have a rooting interest against them, I would be so disappointed in this team for how hard they've fallen on their faces. I mean, they were in the NBA Finals last year. Mm-hmm. They showed a little bit of get up against the Sixers when they were down 3-2. We sat here and watched they were up against Philly in Game 6. Philly came back. They took the lead. Jason Tatum was having a potentially defining game of his career with how bad he was. Mm-hmm. And they got up off the mat and they won the series. But the difference is you're not facing Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid, and James Harden, three guys that are notoriously bad playoff performers in their roles. You're facing Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler. These are guys that are not going to go away. They're not going to let up. I would be shocked if the Celtics even extended this to 5, although the extender will be in the building tonight. Scott Foster is officiating. So.
That's part of the reason why I asked, what do you think it means if the Heat need an extra game?
Notable facts, not only is Scott Foster, the extender, going to be there, the Celtics are 12-0 in games officiated by Scott Foster this year.
What?
So there's a little bit of a trend to buck here, but Chris Paul did break his 14-game losing streak to Scott Foster earlier in the postseason. So you never really know. And
so
these
the Celtics are due for a loss, is what you're saying.
If it makes them go away faster, I'll live with it. Just there we go. But yeah, Jason Tatum has not shown a whole lot of fight. Jaylen Brown has been abysmal. But I think the big thing with this Celtics team is Al Horford has fallen off a cliff. Like I enjoy
seeing that. I don't care for Al Horford.
I don't care for Al Horford either, but he last year was their best player in the playoffs overall. His timely three-point shooting, his defense, his dirty play at times. He was essential for them last year. He was the reason they got out of the Bucks series, and he was a big part of the reason why they were even in the Warriors series. Like, he was tremendous for them, and now he can't buy a three. Like, he's old, too. Like, he was 36 last year, and everybody's like, oh, wow, Al Horford found the fountain of youth. Well, it went away. He looks like he's old again. He looks cooked.
I feel like every team has a player like that I just can't stand. For the Bucks, it's Middleton.
You don't like Chris Middleton?
No.
What's wrong with Chris Middleton?
He just, I don't know. He has kind of like that same dirty player vibe, in my opinion.
Chris Middleton?
I think it's Chris Middleton.
You don't mean Grayson Allen?
Well, Grayson Allen, obviously, but like he doesn't get that many minutes. I'm pretty sure
he's a
it's
starter.
I'm thinking of.
Grayson Allen's
a starter this year.
Yes, he dribbled out the Bucks season in crunch time against the Heat this year.
Oh, I wasn't watching.
Yeah, he didn't get a shot off. Yeah, thank you, Dad, for reminding me. We do have to cook Grant Williams. We can't let Grant Williams off the hook. Game 2, he hit a 3.
Oh, yeah.
And he decided that he was going to talk trash to Jimmy Butler. And, well,
how'd that go?
Jimmy scored on him the next 2 times down the court. They got forehead to forehead, jawing at each other the first time on an and one to cut the lead to 6. Next time down the court, he scores on him again to cut it to 4, hits him with the too small gesture. Jimmy ended up hitting the shot that tied the game and hit the next shot that put him up by 2, and it was over from there. And Grant Williams had a tough year. Like, the last 365 days have not been kind to Grant Williams. He had some embarrassing moments in the finals where he was trying to bait Andrew Wiggins into something by bumping into him or grabbing onto his arm, and Wiggins just kind of moved him out of the way with his elbow when they looked at the ref like a little kid, hoping that mommy and daddy would punish Big Brother for smacking him in the head when he was
What
acting
happened
like a fool.
after that series, after they lost?
Well, he went on a podcast and said that he thought the Celtics were a better team, then showed up at the ESPYs and
Which was being hosted by
Stephen Curry, and, well, yeah, it went about as well as you would think for Grant Williams, who looked sad and annoying like he usually does. He also had a game against the Cavs where the game was tied, and he got fouled to go shoot basically game-winning free throws, or at least one game-winning free throw, and somebody, I think Donovan Mitchell, was talking smack to him, and he was up there, and you could clearly read his lips multiple times saying, I'll make them both. I'll make them both. He didn't make either of them. Game went to overtime, and the Celtics ultimately lost, so that became a meme. And now this. You know, he's the only one, and again, credit to him for actually having the guts to stand up to Jimmy Butler, but man, you're writing checks for somebody else to cash, and your guys aren't with you. Jaylen Brown's checked out. Jason Tatum ain't playing well. Like, this is not your moment here. Like, you needed to just sit this one out.
Yeah, if you're going to try and go toe-to-toe with Jimmy Butler, you're probably going to have a bad time.
I wouldn't do it. I especially wouldn't do it when I'm Grant Williams, and I've just been inserted back in the playoff rotation. He didn't play at all in Game 1. And it was a disaster for Boston, but so they gave him a shot in Game 2, and he, did what he did, and they ultimately lost. And people would say stuff like, well, Jimmy Butler's a killer anyway. He wouldn't, even if Grant Williams didn't talk smack to him. I'm like, maybe. But Jimmy also picks his spots at times, and you're down 9 on the road. You've already gotten the first game in Boston. There's a period where some teams might say, okay, we're willing to punt the rest of this game just because we got the one on the road. You went and pissed him off. There was no chance of that happening. Now, you're going to have to play this out and hope you hold on. And as the Celtics have been one of the worst crunch time teams in the NBA this year, probably not a good idea to go up against a team with that guy when you're in a close game.
Yeah. It's a good thing that it's not ski season up in the Northeast. He might French fry when he's supposed to pizza.
Yeah, well, that sounds appropriate for him. But yeah, excited for the Heat. Hopefully they advance tonight. I'm excited for this finals matchup, as I've already said. Like I said, it's going to come down to can Bam Adebayo stop or at least contain or at least limit or annoy Nikola Jokic. Bam's good. Like, Bam's pretty good. Like, if anybody can do it, maybe him and a couple other guys can do it. But it depends on other players, too. Tyler Hero is going to be out for the remainder of the playoffs, by the way. I think last time we had a podcast, I hinted maybe he could come back, but they said that despite the fact that he's got his cast off his hand removed or whatever, he's not going to be ready to roll anytime soon. So, yeah.
Okay. I mean, what? Glenn? What's his name? Glenn Williams? You said
Grant
Williams. Who's Glenn Williams?
I don't know who Glenn Williams is. It sounds made up.
Yeah, it probably is. What is he doing? Like, why are you trying to antagonize the type of guy who thrives on that type of stuff and will kill you? And that's exactly what happened, right? You should never tickle a sleeping dragon. Like, what are you doing right now? Well, that seems foolish to me.
I think he was hoping that by showing some fire, that the stars of the team would
stop sucking,
would take notice, and would also react the same way, and they didn't. They kind of just looked at him like, "Oh no, what are you doing?" It's like, no, you got to have your man's back. Like, again, it's like, have you ever seen The Wire? There's a moment where Slim Charles is talking about how, this is what we do. Like, we're soldiers. Like, if we have a reason to fight, we fight. And if it's a lie, we fight on that lie. Like, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's a bad idea, that we are enlisted to do this. And his teammates needed to have his back, even if they thought he did something dumb. And they didn't. So I think the leadership of that team takes some responsibility for it as well. You can't just completely blame one guy who was trying to take some initiative when the team was just not showing any guts.
Okay. And then I'd also heard Marcus Smart was talking about whoever Boston's coach is now, about how he was taking some heat in the media and added, rightfully so. So what's the deal with Boston's coach, whose name I don't know,
Joe
and
Mazzulla.
is tonight going to be his last game?
It's tough to say whether or not they're going to fire Joe Mazzulla after they lose this series, but it feels like the answer is probably yes, just because they've got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They're probably going to give Jaylen Brown his max extension this offseason. Presumably they're going to do the same for Jason when he's up next year.
I believe you called him the worst coach in the NBA a couple days ago.
I did, and I stand by that. I think that this playoff series might be the biggest coaching mismatch in the history of playoff series. But that doesn't mean that Mazzulla is irredeemable. He's a 34-year-old who was thrust into this role in a capacity that didn't make much sense to most. It wasn't like they hired him in the offseason. They hired him right as the season was starting because Ime Udoka got in a little bit of trouble. So he gone. And worse yet, it wasn't like he had this awesome staff of coaches behind him to give him a lot of support as a newly minted rookie head coach out of nowhere. They have a skeleton crew staff. They don't have anybody on that bench. So he doesn't have any help, and he's trying to figure this out as he goes. And he's probably dealing with a bunch of players who are pretty salty that the previous guy got fired. So he wasn't in a winning situation. So I think that there's a chance that Boston says run it back with him, get him a veteran staff behind him to give him the support that he needs, try to get the players to buy in. But there's also a chance that they say, look, we've got a window here with these two players who are both very good, despite me making fun of Jaylen Brown and at times making fun of Jason Tatum. These guys are all NBA level players, and they are both still entering their primes. You got to try to win as quickly as possible with them. And so I could see them saying, hey, let's go get a proven commodity at head coach if they can. I don't know if they can. I don't know if they will, but it's definitely not something that should be ruled out. And I think that this team is going to make plenty of changes if and or when they lose tonight, but it's not going to be with their two best players in all likelihood. And the coach is a maybe, but it's guys like Marcus Smart who need to worry about themselves. Because Smart's been bad in this series. Al Horford, again, looks old and cooked. The Time Lord could be on the block. Grant Williams, who knows how long he's going to stay. Because the thing is, I actually think Grant Williams is a pretty good player. But, he's Gunnar Henderson just hit a home run, by the way. Sorry, Corey. So I think that this team's going to go through a lot of changes. I don't know what those will entail. I don't know who they're going to try to pursue. But they can't run it back completely with the same core. They've got to make some adjustments. It's just not working with nobody who can be trusted to handle the ball.
Alrighty. And then finally, we've got Carmelo Anthony announced his retirement.
Yeah, by the way, LeBron's not retiring, y'all. I don't care if he said, I've got a lot to think about. He's not retiring.
He wants to play with Bronny.
Yeah, he said that
He's
a million
playing
times.
2 more years.
He's going to play until Bronny's at least in the league. He's either going to play with Bronny or against Bronny. Yeah, he has softened his stance at playing with Bronny because I think he realized, well, maybe Bronny doesn't want to play with me because that would be really unfortunate for me. It's like if my old man's better than me at basketball on my team, it's a little tough, and he'd be living in his shadow. So there might be a little bit of a walk back on that one, but I still think he wants to play.
It's not a Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr. type thing, right? Like, Griffey Jr. was a phenom, and Griffey Sr., as far as I know, wasn't.
He was a solid player, but nothing special, whereas Griffey was Griffey.
Yeah. But, this is the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think LeBron just, he put that out there. The cynic in me says he put it out there to take attention off the fact that he just got swept for the third time in his career. But also, I didn't get the vibe of retirement from him saying, I've got a lot to think about. I got a vibe of, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with my team, with this Lakers team.
Right. Is he going to be a Laker next year? Which,
again, he's under contract, and one thing that I give LeBron credit for, despite the team hopping that he's done, he's always played out his contracts.
Yeah.
He's never asked for a trade or demanded a trade or gotten out of a situation early. He's always played through until he said he was going to, and then he decided to either stay or leave. And usually he chose to leave, but in this situation, I think he wants to stay with the Lakers, and why wouldn't he? This is a decent situation. It's not the best situation, but you're not just going to walk into anybody's gym and say, hey, let me be here and take over the show. Like, this is his team now. Like, regardless of what we think about Anthony Davis as a player, which, by the way, he was fantastic in these playoffs, it's still always going to be LeBron's team. And I think Anthony Davis is fine with that. But if he tries to roll through Dallas, Luka ain't going to let LeBron take over the team. Or if he tries to go, I'm just throwing out random teams, by the way. I'm not saying that there's any chance of this happening. Or Phoenix, there's no way Booker or Durant is going to say, hey, LeBron, you can come run the show. Or Golden State, he's not going to be able to go in there and say, hey, Steph, this is my team now. That's hilarious. So
LeBron should come to the Wizards.
Yeah,
go to Memphis.
He should come to the Wizards and live out his days in this NBA Siberia, just like the other guy that he's considered to be almost as good as, Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That would be sad.
Michael Jordan didn't retire for several years before he joined the Wizards.
Yeah, he did.
No, I'm sorry. At least LeBron James would not have retired for several years before
for the
joining
second
the
time,
Wizards.
by the way.
Right.
Yes.
He should join the Grizzlies.
So anyway, let's talk about the guy that's actually retiring, Carmelo Anthony. Although he could join the Grizzlies. Straighten out Ja. He could be
If
like
Ja is even still there.
He could be like the father figure that the media wanted him to be for Kyrie when Kyrie got pissed at the question, which I actually was on Kyrie's side that time. Like, the only time I've ever actually agreed with anything Kyrie has done in public was that.
These are adults. Even though some of them act stupid, they're adults. They don't need father figures.
LeBron's 7 years older than Kyrie.
Right,
like,
he's only 7
He's
years
like,
old.
yeah, my 31-year-old dad when I'm a grown-up. What? Are you kidding me?
But even if you were talking about LeBron with like a rookie player, really?
That's
Father
absurd.
figure, that still sounds kind of absurd to me.
He is old
This
enough
is
to
mental.
potentially be a
Would
dad.
be old enough to
Like,
be some of the
he could be Jason Tatum's dad, right? Like,
He could be.
well, that would be a little iffy. But he could definitely be Victor Wembanyama's dad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's Bronny's dad, and Bronny's going to be the NBA in 2 years.
Yep.
So there you go. So anyway, Carmelo Anthony, who came into the NBA the same year as LeBron James, in fact, 2 picks behind LeBron James, has retired.
What's the second pick then?
No, the second pick was Darko Milicic, I think.
Oh,
Clearly a bust. Didn't work
tell
out.
you who that is.
Yeah, so it was LeBron 1, Milicic 2, Melo 3. I think Wade went 5th, and Bosh went 7th or 8th.
I think Bosh went 7th.
Okay,
I could be
that
wrong.
sounds right. So
Oh my God!
that was
Harrison Bader hit a home run.
okay. Well,
Yay.
that was a pretty stacked draft. But Carmelo Anthony, again, kind of I don't want to say complicated legacy because it's not that complicated. He was a pure scorer. Unfortunately, that was all he did, but he was really, really good at that. I mean, he's 9th all time on the NBA scoring list. He's a first ballot.
Really?
Yeah, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer without question. He revitalized the Nuggets a little bit. I think people don't really give him enough credit for that. Where like the Nuggets were never a true contender outside of maybe one year they made a run to the Western Conference Finals, but they were always playoff relevant, and those were the days where the Western Conference was the best it's ever been, and the best that any conference in any sport has probably ever been was the Western Conference for like the previous 20 years until the last couple. Like, it's just ridiculous levels of deep, talented teams where if you won 48 games, you were in the lottery, which was nuts.
Yep.
So, and Melo still led his team to the playoffs every year he was a Nugget. They lost in the first round 6 out of those 7 years, but that was because they were playing the San Antonio Spurs or the Kobe Shaq Lakers or the Minnesota Timberwolves with Kevin Garnett. I mean, it was just an unbelievable gauntlet that they would have had to go through. Or Dirk Nowitzki's Mavs or the Suns, right? Like, there's just too many good teams, and there was no realistic chance of Melo making a run in Denver just because there's just too many good teams and, frankly, better players than Melo was himself. But Nuggets games were on TV. The Nuggets were in the playoffs every year. The Nuggets acquired Allen Iverson largely because they felt like that's a chance to take a step up.
And the Nuggets had their best color scheme, in my opinion.
Yeah, the
they've
powder
ever
blue,
had.
the powder blue unis were nice.
With the yellow, those were nice.
Those were the best. And then he left, and went to New York, and he went to the Knicks. Okay? The Knicks have sucked forever. Whether Melo was there or not, they were going to suck. So I can't really get on him too much for not winning
less.
there. Yeah, I mean, they did suck a little
Well, they
bit less.
sucked a little bit less because of Jeremy Lin.
He did have his Linsanity run, and
That was crazy.
so I mean, like I give Melo credit. And another thing I give Melo a lot of credit for too is he was not a guy that you would associate the word humble with. He's not a guy that you would typically say or expect to take a lesser role. But over the last few years of his career, he absolutely did. He was willing to come off the bench. In the bubble season, he lost a lot of weight. There was always concerns that he played a little too heavy, and as he got older, that wouldn't allow him to sustain himself. But he got himself fit. He carved out a role with several teams, and he was able to stick around for a lot longer than a lot of people thought he could. And that's a big part of the reason why he is a top 10 all-time scorer in the NBA. And he also had some nice mic'd up moments that I can't repeat on here. He was a fixture of the NBA for 20 years. And another thing I don't think he gets enough credit for is he was a fixture of USA basketball for a number of years. Right? Like, he was always the guy that played Team USA in the Olympics. He was always there. LeBron didn't always play in the Olympics. Kobe didn't always play in the Olympics. And Melo also played the off-year stuff, the FIBA World Cup things.
Yeah.
Melo was always the guy that was ready to go play for country. And he always played well, and he always led the United States to wins. So he deserves a lot of credit for that as an Olympian as well. And, despite the fact that there was all the conversation of was he better than LeBron James, that faded quickly. But he was still a great player in his own right. And, I kind of miss watching him play. He was aesthetically pleasing as a player, too. Like, even if some of the stuff has gone out of vogue with the mid-range jump shot and things like that, it was still fun to watch him cook, even in his older age years, where he would just come off the bench and still put up 15, 20 points sometimes.
He knew what he was good at, and he generally stuck to that.
Yeah,
and I can respect that.
Yep, I give him a lot of credit, and I'm happy that he's been able to have such a great career, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame in a good few years, and he's going to be missed in the league.
Alrighty. I mean, that'll do it for topics, unless I'm missing something. A short show for us, a long show for most podcasts, I would say. Y'all have anything to add before we start wrapping up?
No, I mean, I guess, we reconvene next week. We'll be, I guess, just getting underway with the NBA Finals.
Well, we'll reconvene if maybe, I don't know, we're going to be on the road.
Next week?
Yes.
Yes.
All week?
Yes.
Yes.
The whole time. So we might be taking another break.
All right. Well, I guess we'll figure things out.
Yeah.
So we'll be in the middle of the NBA Finals probably next time we do a podcast.
Yeah, maybe. We're not going to forget to do a podcast, right? Like,
Or the finals
we're
could
not
be
just
over, the
going
Heat
to
could sweep.
pack it up.
I don't think that's actually possible. I think by the time we would record, there'd still be it'd be like Game 3.
It's improbable, but not impossible.
Yeah, you're right. All right, let's
All right, so we definitely don't have anything to add then. So, let's get out of here. That'll do it for this week's show. This has been episode 240. If you made it this far into this podcast, you clearly like whatever foolishness we've presented to you. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button so all of our content will be beamed directly to your device immediately after it is posted. You can listen to this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. In addition, it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. If we are not on your podcatcher of choice, please reach out to us, and we will try to get on that one as well. You can reach out to us by email, thesportsballers@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter @sportsballers18. And you can follow Corey on Twitter @Corey Puffett. You can follow Eric on Twitter @Quagmire67. And you can follow me on Twitter @Evan_Ash13. You should like our Facebook page. You should like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube as well. Do we have any YouTube comments that haven't been shouted out?
There were a couple earlier on. Alex Mayo said, F that guy, referring to the A's commentator. He said the demand for immediate results in the NBA is ridiculous. I think that was during our discussion of the Lakers, but I forget exactly what point.
It might also have been Joe Mazzulla as well.
It was before our discussion of Missoula. But that's it.
Okay. All right. Do y'all have any shout-outs?
Yeah, I do. While tonight has not been a great night so far for Garrett Cole, currently down 4-1 in the fourth inning, the second batter of the game was Jorge Mateo, and Garrett Cole struck him out. It was his 2,000th career strikeout. He is the third quickest to 2,000 strikeouts in a career in either the AL or the NL by two different standards. By games pitched, Randy Johnson, 262 games. Clayton Kershaw, 277 games. Garrett Cole, 278 games. By innings pitched, Chris Sale, 1,626 games pitched, or innings pitched. Pedro Martinez, 1,711 and a third innings pitched. And Garrett Cole, just 10 more outs than Pedro Martinez to reach 2,000. So he is the 87th pitcher overall to reach that mark and the 8th to do so as a Yankee.
So you said that Jorge Mateo was the second batter. You mean the second
Mateo's
batter he struck
batting
out?
Or the second batter he struck out.
Because he struck out Vavra and Mateo back to back. So okay.
In the second inning.
Yes.
So congrats to him.
Yeah. Good for him. He's been a great pitcher for a while. So he's always been a strikeout guy. So
Yep.
I prefer.
Why wasn't he more successful with the Pirates?
He had that first year in like 2013. He was awesome, and then
He just kind of came out of nowhere with them.
yeah, and then he kind of faded as a pretty good pitcher for a few years. Then he went to the Astros, and he was great again, and he's just been great since.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Any other shout-outs, Corey?
I guess just shout out to my assistant coaches, David Hoke and Anthony Battle. We're getting ready to start back up with the cross country. Had a meeting with the returning athletes yesterday, the returning WCC champions. And Eric knows because he was there.
Yes.
And tomorrow night we'll have a meeting with new families to the program. So shout out to DeMatha Cross Country.
Woo.
And shout out to championship coach, Coach Puff. Trying to run it back. Bring home some more hardware.
Championship coach, Coach Puff, huh? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I heard Coach Poff.
Puff. Okay.
Oh, Hall of Famer member.
Yes, the Hall of Famer Corey Puffett. I guess should I go now, Evan?
Shout outs because I don't have it.
Okay. So firstly, shout out to Corey and/or Rashonda, whoever makes and/or buys these dope ass cookies that have been here the last several weeks. These rule, and I appreciate.
These are the last of them. Finally.
That's disappointing.
Finally got rid of them.
Well, buy some more. But appreciate
I don't
you
wanna see
guys.
those again.
These rule. They're probably bad for me, but I don't care.
Probably.
They're great. Appreciate having them. It's a nice little snack.
Diet Coke is probably good hydration as well.
Okay, no strays towards family, please. At least not on the air. Anyway, I have to undo a shout out from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
erroneously said that music television, MTV, was going defunct, like the whole channel. It turns out, my dumbass doesn't read closely enough, MTV News is going away.
Yeah, had me
I didn't know
outing
that
myself
existed.
for watching MTV in the basement when I was supposed to be doing homework, and my mom texted me
And
like
you did
a
it
week
for
later.
nothing.
I did it for nothing.
You did it for nothing. Admitting to sins
She
for no
texted
cause.
me. She said, "Are you too old for me to ground you?"
So MTV will be alive. I'm not going to say it's going to be well, but it's alive and will presumably remain so for the foreseeable future. So good for you guys for not dying. MTV News.
You can still watch Punk'd or whatever they show on repeat on.
They show ridiculousness.
Whatever.
Which is actually a show. I tried to explain to my brother. He was like, yeah, they just show ridiculousness all the time. He was like, what do you mean? I was like, no, the show is called Ridiculousness. He's like, oh. I was like, yeah, it's like 80% of their blocks is just Ridiculousness, the show, for hours at a time. So maybe get some more original content or not. Who cares? I don't watch MTV anymore either. But, MTV News, rest in peace.
Yeah.
What did they air on MTV News exactly?
Well, apparently they were a very progressive like news channel.
MTV News was just a program. Like, it wasn't a channel. Was it?
Don't ask me.
I thought it was
the
just a
first I heard of
program.
it.
Or maybe like a
I think
website
it was
or something.
their own channel.
I never saw no MTV News channel, but
Well, I don't know.
we could have to be doing another undue shout out there for how little I know about what I'm talking about. So that's all I got.
Alrighty. First in podcast history, an unshout out.
Yeah.
Shout in, if you will.
A whisper.
A whisper in. There you go.
Whisper in.
Before we get out of here, one more shout out. Shout out to everybody competing in the Jeopardy Masters event. It's been awesome the last couple of weeks. I highly recommend people check it out if they have Hulu. It's been great. Some familiar faces for most, but it's been a lot of fun, and I'm curious to see who won tonight's 2 semifinal games. I'm sure I will watch them when I get home. But if you're into question and answer, or answering question in this case, go check it out because it's a lot of fun.
Alrighty. So we're done. Thank you all so much for listening. I've already done all the little closing bits. Thank you all for listening. Stay well and bathe. And this has been episode 240. And we will talk to you hopefully next week, but maybe in a couple weeks. Take it easy.